With week 11 of the college football season on the horizon, there are several teams that are still trying to make their claims as contenders as the first ever 12-team college football selection committee was had this past Tuesday, showing the world who the committee likes and has proven themselves. Week 11 also proves to weave out just a few more teams with some matchups that could very well make or break a few seasons. Want to find out what these matchups are and who the teams are? Stay tuned to find out on Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you so much for showing up with us. And I'm, of course, Mr. CeeLo, joining you here for another opportunity to have a good time with you guys and hopefully give you some info and you guys give me some info as we are checking out this Week 11 season. As I said, we've seen the first 12-team playoff, whom's in and whom would be in and whom would be out. I'm so not with this whole, well, there's a lot of football to be played and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not with that. It'll play itself out. I really get sick and tired of hearing Joey Galloway say that. And because the reality of it is, it doesn't play itself out. Because if a team is there at number one and they haven't really played that effectively and they've got nothing left on the schedule, you keep saying that'll play its way out. No, it really doesn't. There have been times where it really has not. And these teams get to stay in the number 2 or the number 1 spot. And that's just not cool. I mean, and it really does not do what it's supposed to do. And as I said, I don't know if you guys agree with me. I know, Brad, you're going to give me the take on it. But I always appreciate you, brother. But let us get into a little bit of housekeeping we got. As I said, you guys know my man Brad is always going to do his thing. He told me to have a great day. Back at you, my friend. And I hope all you are having a great day as well. Bluefield Rule. They're referring to the Broncos, per usual. Then there's another one. That 1-2 punch of the Pony Express. Absolutely, brother. Hey, listen. One of the most entertaining, I'm telling you, I love watching these guys now. They are so good. And they're young. That's what's scary. They're young. Big game on cable. I watch these games on YouTube. You're going to have to send us a link, brother. I watch mine on a YouTube link as well. So definitely, I'm with you on that. I definitely be chasing these games down on YouTube, brother. So I'm definitely with you. Well, that's one thing we agree on. We're both college football nuts. Golden Gophers got me clapping it up. Grats. Yeah, that was a very good game. That was a lot of fun. It was probably one of the best Saturdays I had saw next to week. Was it week 7? I think it was week 6. And of course, you say howdy as always. Nope, can't say that neither. You know what it is. Yep, 4 games at once on one TV. Now, I can't do that now. I'm going to have to get me another big screen so I can, I know what you're going to say. You got 4. Yeah, I can't do that. Yeah, y'all, it was very ugly for Georgia, so yeah. Ride Pony Express, absolutely. No, it's not hating. I mean, I could say the same thing about you with my Irish, because, I wouldn't have stormed the field had I beat y'all, so, whatever the case may be. Y'all stormed the field.
Yoo-hoo! I'll make you famous.
But let's get into it. Let us get into the business at hand, which is week number 11, you guys, as they have given us the first opportunity to see what the college football playoff 12-team playoff would look like. Well, I'm very I wouldn't say I'm necessarily unimpressed, but let us get started on this and let's get it going. As the number 25 Army Black Knights look to go to 9-0 as they face off against the North Texas team that is quietly 5-3. Now, there are a lot of people that are saying that the Army Black Knights have not really played any fierce competition. Well, look, when you're undefeated and you got that 0 at the end of it, look, at the end of the day, it is what it is. You play who's on your schedule, and that does not just apply to the SEC. I don't understand why. It only applies to the Southeastern Conference. So, while we're debating that topic, you go undefeated, you're going to get everybody's best. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. Every time you play somebody, when you're undefeated, you get their best. So, looking at this game here, I'm simply going to say that I think Army, of course, has the edge, but the reality of it is this triple option that they run is just unlike anything else that you've seen other than when you watch Navy. And the reality of it is you've seen so many teams running the spread, it gets to be difficult because you're used to seeing just the spread. And then when you get to really stopping a spread attack, it gets difficult when you get all compact in there and you've got linebackers and safeties that have to not only make plays in space, but they also have to be very disciplined with their eyes. Now, looking at North Texas, I haven't really watched much of North Texas, so it's really difficult to get a gauge on it. But I like at the end of what I've seen so far, I really like Army. And a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, you like them because they're undefeated." Well, I'm not sold on North Texas being able to stop the triple option. It looks so easy to do, but unfortunately it's not. So with that being said, I'm going to go with the Army Black Knights on this one. Then we got the 5-4 Oklahoma Sooners facing off against the 6-2 overrated Missouri Tigers. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to maybe have an issue with me saying that. But look, the reality of it is Missouri hasn't shown anything. They've beaten up on inferior teams and really haven't beaten anybody else. Meanwhile, you look at this Oklahoma team who was able to get a win against Maine last week, 59-14. And this is pretty much going to Oklahoma has to win this game if they want to finish 500. Because right now it's looking like if they lose this game, I wouldn't expect them to finish 500. Now, looking at this game, this is a very winnable game for the Oklahoma Sooners. And the reason why I say that is that they could very well go into this game and control the clock. All they have to do is if Brent Venables can do what he does, which is play really tight defense and keep Cook in check, I don't see any reason why this team can't pull out a win. Now, here's the flip side to that. Now, do I think Brady Cook's an elite quarterback? No, far from it. Do I think he's a good quarterback? Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that he's put up pretty darn good numbers right now. He's at 1575, 7 touchdowns. However, it's just like I've said many times over. Missouri has been a team that when you look back at them, they have not been an impressive football team when they play the more talented teams that are equally as talented as they are. And that's not what you want to see. Then Oklahoma, who's had issues with injuries in their receiving core, has straight ravaged their in receiving core. However, there's been issues, not horrible issues, with their quarterback play, but a lot of that comes from an inability to be able to get receivers open and understand continuity. So that is a huge issue. But at the end of the day, defense has to be able to pick up and play to another level. They've done exceptionally well considering what they have. But Venables has got to get this team under control as far as mistakes and the quarterback's position. I'm looking at this and I'm saying that do I think that Missouri can win this game? I don't know. But I'm going to say it like this. I think that it's a major toss-up. The only reason I'm going with Missouri is because this is a home game. It's going to be close. I don't think this is going to be a game that they're going to walk the dog with them. I think this is going to be a pretty good matchup to go with. But I think ultimately Brady Cook and the Missouri Tigers are able to make enough plays. Just enough plays. And I think Oklahoma loses a close one. Next, we got the Clemson Tigers facing off against the Virginia Tech Hokies. Now, everybody needs to be very careful about what I'm about to say. Now, the Virginia Tech Hokies are 5-4. However, this game is in Blacksburg. This game has to be a game where Virginia Tech controls the football. I think the defense is going to have to keep Phil Maffa in check. If they keep Phil Maffa in check, this is going to be one of those games. This is going to be one of those games. And ultimately, what's got to happen is Virginia Tech's going to have to keep him in check. Because as I said, Cade Klubnik is not a guy that I'm afraid of for them. I'm not really... to me, everybody sits and talks. Now, I will say this. Do I think Klubnik performs well against subpar competition? Absolutely. But Virginia Tech's got a pretty good defense. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and even knock that. But, especially when it's in Blacksburg. So, you got to be exceptionally aware if you're looking at the totality of what they're able to do. Do I think Phil Maffa is a different player than many running backs in the country? Of course he is. One of the biggest, strongest, and one of the quickest for his size. Got a very good jump cut. So, with that being said, I look for a close game here. I look for a very close game here. I think what eventually happens is you get a couple of turnovers. Them being Virginia Tech, I think it keeps this game close. The crowd is a factor, but I think Phil Maffa is going to be the difference here. And I think Clemson probably pulls this game away late in the fourth quarter. So I'm taking the Clemson Tigers in a tight one. Next, we've got the surprising 7-1 Washington State Cougars hosting the independent Washington State Cougars hosting the Utah State 2-6 Utah State Aggies. Now, of course, we're just bringing this game up because Wazoo is in the top 25. As John Mateer is really balling out. The guy's got 775 yards on the ground as well as 2153 in the air. You heard me right. Almost 600 yards on the ground and almost 2,200 yards in the air. And quietly, probably a guy that should probably have some Heisman hype. But if you guys remember, Cam Ward was in this system last year. So, yes, could we see John Mateer transfer to Miami next year? I don't think so. But having said that, I just think this is not going to be a game. This game is in Pullman, and I think ultimately this is going to be a game where Wazoo and John Mateer and these guys are able to just run up the score. So I think this is going to be a blowout, and it's going to be a question of whether or not you move them up the ladder because of this win. Next, we got the 6-2 Colorado Buffaloes facing off against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. As I said, I'm not a fan of Deion Sanders. Probably never will be. But, of course, I have a lot of love for Shedeur Sanders, even though, there's a few things that he could, I could do without. But you can't argue that arguably the best player in this entire game is Shedeur Sanders. I definitely don't deny that. He's an exciting player to watch, but in games like this, he's generally a guy that doesn't hold up very well. Now, I'm not saying he's not tough, but what I'm saying is he generally doesn't hold up exceptionally well because the opposing side has a better pass rush. So when you really start to break down this matchup here, to me it becomes a game of whether or not Texas Tech can get a pass rush. And Texas Tech I don't want to necessarily say they've had trouble getting sacks, but they send a lot of different looks to an offense to make them have to decide what they're going to block and how they're going to defend you. As a team, they have 11 sacks and 11 interceptions. So, as a team, they're a team that they're in the middle of the road as far as defense goes. So, the difference is that Texas Tech has played a lot of big defensive fronts, and really, Texas Tech is not really big at all. They're not really that good. They're not really all that impressive when you look at them and you ask, what can they do and what do they do well? But on the other hand, when you go back and you look at this Texas Tech team, you got Josh Kelly, who's got 68 grabs for 736. You've got Morton, who's got over 2,300 yards passing, 19 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. So, and you got Brooks, who's got over 1,000 yards rushing. So you're looking at a wide open offense. So we're looking at a team that could possibly go head to head with Colorado offensively. This is why I'm looking at this Colorado game and I'm thinking to myself, they don't have much of a pass rush. This is why I have a lot of concern. Shedeur has almost 26,700 yards passing, but then when we look at the defensive side of the ball, now, they do have 22 sacks on the season, but you have to look at the level of competition that these guys play, which is they haven't played an offense to this level. They have not played an offense to this level, so needless to say, this is going to be a big deal. Now, I will say this. Do I think Texas Tech's offensive line can block Colorado? I believe they can. Which is why I'm calling for Texas Tech to pull the upset. That doesn't mean that I don't think Shedeur Sanders is not going to throw for 400 yards. I think ultimately that Coach Prime going to have to figure out how to recruit defense, but I don't think he'll be there after this season anyway with the Florida State job coming. Next, we've got the 4-4 Virginia Cavaliers visiting the number 18 Pitt Panthers, who took a major smackdown last week. And, the thing that I asked last week was whether or not the Pittsburgh Panthers were going to be able to score any points. And it's kind of one of those, I would say it's one of those same questions I'm asking this week, but it's really not, because I'm looking at this, this Virginia team, and the most points they've scored all season was 43 against Coastal Carolina. So I'm not really a fan of this team actually scoring a whole lot of points. And you got to score points against this Pittsburgh team. So, yeah, I don't. And for that reason, I don't see Virginia Tech pulling off a win in this game. Because the reality of it is you have to be able to score points. Even though Pittsburgh is not a good team at scoring points, but they play really good defense. And then on top of that, you got to look at Virginia. They've had some good moments this season. It looks like the program is headed in the right direction, but I think ultimately you're asking this football team to do something that unfortunately a lot of teams are not able to do, and SMU showed why they're one of the top 10 teams in the country. But I think Pittsburgh wins this game, and they move to 8-1. Next, we got the Iowa State Cyclones taking on a team that is just absolutely burned out. I would have never guessed Kansas would have finished 2-6 with the two guys they got in that backfield. And you got the Iowa State Cyclones who took their first loss last week. I got to tell you, looking at I hope the Jayhawks have a bounce back season, because this was totally, I never would expect that Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal would have been only accounted for 2 wins this season. I would have never guessed that. But Iowa State goes into the Jayhawks' house, and like I said, they're smelling something. I mean, look, you're 2-6. The biggest thing you want to do, pull an upset. And the Cyclones just got upset last week, and you're second in the Big 12. So you're trying to accomplish something here and salvage some kind of pride in your season. Meanwhile, the Cyclones are trying to take over that number 1 spot in hopes of getting into that. Well, they're already in the Big 12 title game, so it really doesn't matter. I think the way that works is hosting. So that's what they want. They want to be able to host that championship game. But, you see Rocco Beck's got over 2,000 yards passing, Carson Hansen right at 400. But they've got somewhat of I don't want to say a two-headed monster, but they really do. Their defense is it's so different than a lot of teams in the Big 12. They played really, I don't want to say great defense. They play efficient defense. And because you look at it, and they really have a bend but don't break philosophy. That's kind of how they live. And Kansas still has the ability to score points. As I said, Kansas still has Jalen Daniels, even though he has not been the quarterback that we thought he would be. Well, I thought he was going to be. Devin Neal's still been pretty good. He's got almost over 750 yards rushing. But that doesn't mean, like I said, this football team can still perform at a high level and make the upset. And which is not what I'm calling for. I'm not calling for that. I am calling for the Iowa State win. Next up, we got the 3-7 Nevada Wolfpack visiting the 7-1 Boise State Broncos. And you guys know what I'm talking about right here. You guys already know what I'm talking about. My man Ashton Johnson, 15-25, 20 touchdowns, still continuing his big ordeal to get the Heisman Trophy. I think he's ultimately going to get it. I don't see this game being close. I'm going to do my best to watch this game. Hopefully, we're going to get more games where we're going to be able to see Ashton Johnson. Listen, if you guys can watch this game, please go and check it out. It's at 8 o'clock. It's at 8 o'clock. I was wrong. We don't have to stay up. We can watch it. It's going to be on Fox, you guys. He's garnering so much attention, but I think this is going to be one of those games where he has the opportunity to put up big numbers. Then we've got a showcase, guys. This is going to be a good one. We've got the Alabama Crimson Tide visiting Death Valley, as they refer to it. Now, I recall the last time they went to Death Valley, it didn't turn out so well for the Crimson Tide. But I'm looking at this game, and I'm saying to myself that Alabama's defense is slowly starting to look like a defense that can be a contender. Now, what I really think is going to be the catalyst in this game is going to be whether or not the Alabama Crimson Tide can get their offense going. Now, LSU has a propensity to give up points. Do I think that happens here? Not really sure. But I honestly am looking forward to what Jalen Milroe can do, because I'm not really sold on Nussmeier against a really good defense. Now, do I think Kyron Lacy is a huge guy when it comes to this game? I think he could have a monster game. He has a potential to, because Alabama's defense has shown the ability to give up yardage. So, with that being said, and the game being in Baton Rouge, I am going to go ahead and I am going to say that the Tide need this game more than the Tigers do. And I'm going to take the Tide in this one. I think Milroe has a huge game. I think Nussmeier makes mistakes in this game, and I think they're able to. I think Alabama's running game is going to show up this week. I think ultimately what's going to happen is they're going to be able to run the football. I think Jam Miller is going to have a big game. And that read option game is going to be huge for the Tide. So I'm taking the Crimson Tide in this game. Next up, we've got the 7:30 game between my Fighting Irish and the Florida State Seminoles. Now, I'm not going to rule out upset in this game because Florida State is not playing for anything. And this is usually one of those games where if you're Notre Dame, you're looking ahead. You're going to be looking at, and a lot of people are going to say, why would Notre Dame be looking ahead? Well, because ultimately, you know you got to deal with Army in a couple of weeks. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's not next week. Now, is it? Well, you can start looking ahead. But I ultimately think what's going to decide this game is going to be whether or not Florida State can slow down Riley Leonard. Now, you guys remember the Georgia Tech quarterback gave Florida State fits with his mobility. And I think that's what's probably going to happen here. I think Florida State, they're going to try to put up some points. And I think they're going to be successful. But I do believe that Notre Dame is able to pull out the win. I think it's going to be a big one. But I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State kept this thing close for 2 quarters because they're slowly, Norvell's starting to get these guys at a point where they're playing with pride. They played Clemson exceptionally well a couple weeks ago, and I don't see any different here. I think Notre Dame protects home field. Riley Leonard possibly throws a touchdown and an interception, and he runs for 2. Then we've got undefeated BYU up against the 4-4 Utah Utes. Now, I'm going to say, with Cam Rising not playing in this game, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to tell you guys, listen, this game is not going to be nearly as tough as it once would have. After Rising lost against Arizona, and he was literally ruled out the remainder of the season, I don't see them being able to win this game. They lost at Houston last week. Now, defense is still good, but I think ultimately what's going to win this game for the BYU Cougars is going to be their defense. I think their defense wins this game. I think they turn Utah over in deep in territory a couple of times, and that's going to put BYU at 9-0. Then we look at 5-4 unranked Michigan looking to knock off Indiana and stop their 10-0, their first ever 10-0 season. Well, let us look at what Indiana has. Now, do I think Indiana is going to go to 10-0? Let's see, because when we look at the way Michigan has played, Michigan's had issues running the football against really good football teams. Now, do I think Indiana is a team that is a good defensive team? Yes and no. When we look at the Maryland game and we look at the Northwestern game, the Washington game was impressive. And this is a situation where they've got one more game before that Ohio State game. So this is a game that could very well be a trap game. Very well be a trap game. So do I think Indiana's going to handle business? My heart is telling me Indiana, but my gut is telling me Michigan. I'm going with Indiana being 10-0 for the first time in school history. Then we got one of the matchups that really is going to put Nico Iamaleava up there in the Heisman talks again. I don't see this Mississippi State game doing very much. I think Rocky Top's going to be singing all night. I don't see any way that Mississippi State's going to make this a game because right now Tennessee is struggling to throw the football consistently, but they're still running the football at such a high clip. And I had a friend of the show's. He said something about running back Dylan Sampson, and he brought it to my attention that Sampson is 20 yards away from 1,000 yards. He's got 19 scores on the year, guys. And this is going to ultimately be a huge problem, I think, for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. They're not very good at stopping the run. I think this is going to be a game where Nico Iamaleava may get a touchdown pass, but I think ultimately it's going to be a game where the running game is just going to dominate. Rocky Top's going to go, and they're going to win this game running away. Then we've got the 5-4 Washington Huskies taking on the Penn State Nittany Lions after coming off that tough loss at home to Ohio State. Now, I'm going to say this. Washington has been a pest in the Big Ten this year. They're 5-4, but they've been a pest. So it's going to be up to Penn State to get this game over quick. I think what ends up happening in this game, being that it's a home game, Washington's played good on the road, but I still think there are a few things to be desired when you start looking at the Washington Huskies. I will say that I think Will Rogers has done a pretty darn admirable job at Washington. He's thrown for almost 2,300 yards. He's got 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, but he's been sacked 16 times. So I ultimately believe between he and Johnny Coleman, if they can get a mixture going and not turn the ball over and get some stops on that running game for Penn State, this could be a really good game. So for that reason, I am going to take Penn State, but it's going to be by a few. It would not shock me, guys, Brad, that if Washington pulled the upset here. But I'm going with Penn State. Next, we got the number 5 Texas Longhorns against the 4-4 Florida Gators. Need we say anything else? I mean, this is going to be a smackdown. And I hate to say this about the Florida Gators because they've played back so valiantly against one of the worst schedules in the country. It is just absolutely unfair. But they've come in. I believe they're going to give all they can. They're going to fight. Quinn Ewers is probably going to have a monster game here. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Georgia didn't have that much luck throwing the football. Well, this is a much less effective pass rush. So I'm looking for Texas to run this thing over the top and get back to business. Sark will have these guys ready. I just don't know if Florida's front, which is fast, but I don't know if they're going to be able to get Ewers. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Manning a little bit. Here's the game that a lot of us are looking for. Miami, number 4 undefeated Miami against Georgia Tech. Now, as all of you know, gab out to my man Romello. A lot of you know that Georgia Tech got its first shot at Florida State and handled their business. But you're looking at a football team that when Haynes King is able to throw the football efficiently, he's actually pretty good. Look at his he's thrown for 1,568, 8 touchdowns and 1 interception. But his forte is running the football. And see, if Haynes King ever gets a handle on throwing the football, he could arguably be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Because we already know he's run for 353 yards on the year. That's before his injury. He's, like I said, if they can get into Miami and give them problems stopping the run, which Miami is notorious for, they've had problems stopping the run because Jamal Haynes has 568 as well. Between those two guys, you've got almost 900 yards, over 900 yards of rushing. So it wouldn't shock me if this Miami team is looking up in the fourth quarter and they're behind. Georgia Tech played Notre Dame very well. And then it just became a game of matchups, which Notre Dame was going to win because, as we said, Notre Dame has a greater talent pool than Georgia Tech. But in this game, I think Cam Ward is coming to the end. I don't want to say that, but I got a feeling this could be the week. The Miami Hurricanes could fall going to Atlanta, and that crowd's going to be ruckus. You know they're going to be wanting that upset. But I'm going to go with Miami on the edge, but there's going to be, I want y'all to remember this. I said it. I still got a feeling that Georgia Tech may give them nightmares. Haynes King is going to be huge. But I'm taking Miami by a slim margin. Then we've got probably the juiciest matchup of the week. Number 3, Georgia going to Oxford, Ole Miss. Now, I'm going to say it in this simplest way I can. I'm not sold on Ole Miss in big games, whether it's home, neutral, on the road. I think Georgia gets this thing done and pretty much puts the silence on anything that that Ole Miss thought they were going to do. And it's nothing to do with Jackson Dart. It's just the fact that Lane Kiffin he just can't get it done. And I know a lot of people say, well, he don't have the talent. Well, stop talking like you do. Bruh. Just real talk. If you're not a top tier team, stop pretending you do. I love Jackson Dart. I think he's a great kid. But here's the other thing. Now, everybody's going to say Carson Beck is due for a game. Well, what do you mean? A game without turnovers, or a game where he's throwing for 400 yards and 5 interceptions? What are you referring to? I don't know what you're referring to. Beck's thrown for 2,302, 17 scores, 11 interceptions, and reality of it is, I'm sitting here looking at this, and he's thrown the football 290 times. Georgia's only ran the football for the whole season 236 times. What is that? See, if Georgia loses the game, it's because they just dumb. You're not going to sit here and tell me the problems that your quarterback's been having, because to me, I don't care what people are saying. Carson Beck never looked like a 5-star quarterback to me. Still don't. Don't know where you got that from. And Georgia needs to get back to running the football. I mean, you've got 2 guys that are over 270 yards rushing, and it needs to stay that way. That was when Georgia's tradition was they had guys that would run the football. You got these 2 guys are averaging over 4.5 yards a carry. Stop with the whole Carson Beck, parade of going number 1 in the NFL. I get it. It helps you with recruiting. Doesn't help you with your running backs.
What a dumbass.
But I'm going to take Georgia in this game, but don't be surprised if you see Ole Miss jump out early. Don't be surprised if you see them jump out early. But Georgia ultimately wins this game. And then we've got a game that Ryan Day should just be like, look, man, I don't have anybody in the Heisman voting. Now, I get it. Purdue could come out and they could put their thing on them. They've shown that they're capable of doing that. But, however, this is a game Ohio State is not going to lose. Write it down. This is a game they're not going to lose. For the simple reason that they understand that they control their own destiny right now. They understand that. They control their own destiny. They don't have anything in the way other than Indiana and Michigan. And I don't think they're fearing Michigan right now, except maybe the ghost of Michigan. But they've got Northwestern next week. If any opportunity for Ohio State to slip up, it's going to be next week. I don't see them slipping up this week. I think they're gonna handle their business. You'll see Judkins probably have a good day. Henderson's probably gonna have a good day, and Howard's gonna throw this ball sparingly up until they have to. I think it's not gonna be a situation where they're trying to get Howard out there and get him in a situation where if he makes a bad throw, it's gonna cause him to have nightmares. They definitely don't want that. So they're gonna try to get out of here and keep that number 2 position. Then we look at the 4-4 Maryland Terrapins facing off against the undefeated number 1 Oregon Ducks. Now, before we completely just write off the Maryland Terrapins, this is a team that is rather interesting. Who am I kidding? No. Oregon is doing everything they can to mop the floor with everybody and get it done and get out of town. There's no doubt that this is a football team that is convinced that is the top dog. When they knocked off Ohio State, they felt like that was the dragon they had to slay. I thought they played a really good game, but I also thought that, considering it's your building, you guys know my philosophy, you're supposed to win in your building. The telltale sign is when you can win on the road. But I don't think Dylan Gabriel and the Oregon Ducks will have any issues. The question is going to be, can they get out of this game and get out of this game with no injuries and keep this roster intact up until the end of the season? I mean, I don't even see Washington being an issue this season. I think this is going to be a situation where these guys are playing and they're going to meet up with Ohio State yet again in the Big Ten championship. I think that's what we're ultimately going to be looking at, is these two facing off yet again in in the Big Ten championship, given that Ohio State can knock off Indiana. Given they can do that. But guys, let's look over here at the top 25, what it looks like. You got Louisville unranked back in the top 25. I'm surprised at that. Vanderbilt's at 24, not ranked last week. Pittsburgh goes down 4 spots after their crushing defeat. Kansas State goes down 5. I thought they were off. No. Colorado goes up to 21, overrated. Washington State goes up to, I can deal with that. Clemson drops 8. Army goes up 3 to number 18. Iowa State falls after suffering their first defeat to number 17. I don't like that. Ole Miss goes up 3 and they're a 2-loss team. No. Texas A&M only drops 5 down to number 15 on a bye week. LSU goes up 2 to 6-2. SMU goes up 7 to number 13. Boise State goes up 3 to number 12. Alabama goes up 3 to number 11. Notre Dame drops 2. See the favoritism that's going on here, you guys. BYU goes to number 9 and they're undefeated. And that they stay put. Indiana goes up 5 after going 9-0 to number 8. They should have went over Tennessee. Tennessee stays put at number 7. Penn State drops 3 to number 6 after their defeat at the hands of Ohio State. Texas moves up 1 to number 5. Miami up 1 to 4. Ohio State up to 3. And Georgia up to number 2. And then we got Oregon up to, stays at put as the unanimous number 1. Now let's look at the college football playoffs as they were unveiled. Army comes in at number 25. Missouri, not even ranked, is 24. Clemson, number 23. Louisville, 22. Washington State, 21. Colorado, 20. I don't know how they got that. Kansas State, 19. Pittsburgh, 18. Iowa State, 17. Ole Miss, 16. LSU, 15. Texas A&M, 14. SMU, 13. Boise State, 12. Alabama, 11. Notre Dame, 10. BYU, 9. Indiana, 8. Tennessee, 7. Penn State, 6. Texas, 5. Miami, 4. Georgia, 3. Ohio State, 2. Oregon, 1. So I understand why they did it that way, and I'm okay with that. But guys, if you have any doubts or issues with the top 25 or the college football playoff rankings, the first one, or you have any issues with how I broke down these games, please let me know. As I said, we are going to get ready, and we are going to have a great, I think it's going to be a great Saturday. I think we're going to find some things, and there's going to be some things shaking out. But guys, I hope you stay safe this Saturday. Have a great time. Make sure you go to my Facebook page at Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Tell me the things that you want me to talk about. Go to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo and find out all the other things that I'm involved in, as well as leaving a comment down below. And especially if you subscribe, leave a comment down there and let me know what you're thinking about. Make sure you find a game to watch this weekend so you can hit me up. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.